It is 5 Thoughts time, and today's first one is about James Harden's post defense, which has received praise lately thanks to some impressive play tracking stats. I'm quite low on Harden's transition and off-ball defense, but his post defense has been a legitimate strength for the last few years. Harden is built like a shorter power forward from the late 1990s, and he uses that bulk to keep post players at bay. Notice how his arms are in tight on all of these, bracing for contact. He's not worried about blocking a shot or a vertical challenge. This is just banging away at opponents and stonewalling them right on the spot. There's also some poker playing going on here. Weak post players will grow wide-eyed when they're matched up with the shorter Harden, but guys like Myers Leonard can't actually get good looks against him because of his strength. Even though he's taller, a Hassan Whiteside 10-foot hook over Harden isn't exactly efficient offense either. If we look at the post-ups that Synergy has tracked since 2017, Harden is 7th in the league in points allowed per possession among players with at least 200 post-ups defended, ahead of guys like Joel Embiid, Anthony Davis, and Rudy Gobert. So the numbers support the idea that he's been a very successful post defender. But remember, that doesn't mean he's a better post defender than the game's best defensive big men. As I discuss in the Stats 101 series, always think about what a stat measures. In this case, it's tracking only who chooses to post you up. Harden has defended nearly twice as many post-ups per minute as Embiid because all but the best post-up players tend to avoid Joel, while weaker post-up players indiscriminately target Harden, often to a fault. A Draymond Green fading hook is unimaginably bad for the death lineup. When better post players go at James, he lacks a vertical component to disrupt their attempts, and that prevents him from being a great post defender, at least in the sense of slowing down dominant big men. But his post defense is his strongest defensive attribute, and right now, he's one of the better perimeter players in the league at guarding the post. Thought number 2 is Jaren Jackson has a fouling problem. As I discussed in his rookie profile, Jackson actually had a fouling issue last year too, but it hasn't improved. His fouling rates are almost identical, landing him in the 4th percentile league-wide. Some of these are tough whistles. He doesn't get the benefit of the call on body contact plays or when offensive players initiate contact, but Jackson still hasn't found that physical control and sturdy athletic base that he'll need to excel as a paint defender. He's fairly upright here and becomes a target for the offensive player. He also needs to adjust his habit of extending his arms without verticality. His instinct is to smother a shot like this, but it's hemorrhaging fouls. Offensive players are jumping up and into his arm on this play, and even though I philosophically disagree, this is usually called a defensive foul. It looks like he's playing not to foul here and ends up fouling anyway, which then becomes a mental issue. And all of this has taken a bite out of his defensive metrics. His shot blocking rates are down this year, for instance. And this is a great reminder that growth isn't linear. Jackson didn't suddenly lose his defensive instincts. He's just struggling to incorporate physical growth and outgrow those exploitable habits. It's reassuring that incredible defensive bigs like Draymond Green have struggled with fouling earlier in their careers, but if this is still an issue next year, it's time to sound an alarm. Thought number 3 is that the Eastern Conference finally has caught up to the West, maybe, if we compare win percentages side by side for each conference's seed. So the East top seed versus the West top seed, the East second seed versus the West second, and so on. The West has been dominant this entire decade. Here's a snapshot from 2014 at the same point in this season, where the West was better at nearly every position and already a whopping 48 games over 500 versus the East. They finished that year 118 games over 500 against the East. In 2015, it was a clean sweep at this point in the year, and the West would go on to win interleague play by 78 games. 2016 was closer, but the East made up ground on the fringe playoff spots only, not exactly something to write home about. 2017 again saw superiority from the playoff teams in the Western Conference, and in 2018, things were finally a bit closer, although the West ended up with Houston and Golden State as heavy favorites in May. The top teams in each conference were comparable last year, with the West's conference edge coming from the depth of its playoff quality teams. Now look at this year. The East doesn't have a playoff seed with a worse record than its Western counterpart. Not a single one. The conferences are only close because the non-playoff teams in the East are worse than the non-playoff teams in the West. The East hasn't beaten the West in interleague play since 2009, but this is the best Eastern Conference in a decade, and it's safe to say there's no conference imbalance in 2020. Thought number 4 is about how good Ricky Rubio's passing is. Rubio has always been a gifted passer, going back to his teenage prodigy seasons in Europe, and he's having arguably his best passing year in the NBA right now. His reads have been an amplifying force for Monty Booker's movement-heavy offense, and that synergy has dropped Rubio's turnovers way down and is a huge reason he leads the league in passer rating. Rubio is always under control, gnashing his way around the hoop at times, and his deliveries are often incredibly accurate. He makes smart basketball plays like simple hit-aheads on outlets, and his transition passing is quite good as well. Ricky makes most of the standard pick-and-roll passes. He can skip it over to a shaking shooter, and he's comfortable kicking it back out to poppers over his shoulder like this. Note the speed on that one. But I do have some small quibbles with his pick-and-roll passing. Some of this is his own lack of scoring oomph to move defenses, but he won't always hit roll men, and sometimes his size prevents him from finding quality passes. Taller playmakers like LeBron or Luka will laser this to the roller, and on this play, Ricky jumps to essentially make the equivalent pass. Relative to some of the other elite dime droppers, Rubio doesn't manipulate defenses quite as frequently. On this play, he successfully moves the defender with a ball fake, but then doesn't realize this pass is now open. Still, Rubio is one of the best passers in the league, and his propensity for hitting cutters with pinpoint precision has melded well with movers like Kelly Oubre and Devon Booker, and a reason the Suns have a 116 offensive rating with him in the game. Speaking of Booker, thought number 5 is about his movement and how it's meshing with Rubio and that Suns offense. In profiling him this summer, I had some concerns about Book's off-ball activity, and I'd say he's already outpaced my expectations with some of his cutting and movement. Let's start with how explosive this corner face cut is that the Suns run a lot. There's basically no setup here. This is just feel, quickness, and timing up the entry pass angle. But things like his back doors have been really crisp too. That's a textbook foot in the ground and go, the perfect counter when he feels the defender overplaying the handoff. But there's also more advanced stuff here, like this flare cut to the corner the second he feels Jaylen Brown go inside the pin down screen. Only an incredible reaction by Grant Williams prevents an open look here. Booker just naturally has a good feel for curling off screens into empty pockets. This is the same play as the previous one, only this time he counters the overplay by cutting under the screens and moves to open space near the elbow, and hey, Rubio hits him with a perfect pass. This is a beautiful dive in transition that nets a layup, and I don't know if this one is planned or not, but cutting inside his man behind another cutter is basketball nirvana. When accounting for his defense, I'm not sure Booker's one of the 12 best players in the West right now, but this kind of off-ball activity and quick decision-making has given him a great shot at making his first All-Star team in February. If you want to support this channel, be sure to check out the Thinking Basketball podcast, links in the description below, and you can find more content and proprietary metrics over at patreon.com/thinkingbasketball. Thanks for watching all the way to the end, and I hope you're enjoying your holiday season and having a great day.